Beneath the rolling hills and otherworldly stone formations of central Turkey lies one of the most extraordinary secrets of the ancient world. Cappadocia, famous for its surreal landscape of conical rock towers and cave dwellings, hides beneath it an entire labyrinth of tunnels, chambers, and vaults carved directly into volcanic stone. To the untrained eye, it seems like nothing more than a geological wonder, but for those who have ventured below the surface, it is clear that something far greater lies buried here, a lost world beneath the earth. The story begins with the strange, soft rock known as tuff, formed by ancient volcanic eruptions millions of years ago. Early humans discovered that this material, though solid, was easy to carve, and so they began to shape their homes directly into the cliffs and hillsides. But what started as modest shelters evolved over centuries into something much larger and far more mysterious. When archaeologists first entered the underground cities of Cappadocia, what they found defied logic. Narrow staircases spiraled deep into the earth, sometimes descending more than 10 stories underground. Great stone doors, each weighing hundreds of pounds, were placed to seal entire sections shut from the inside. Massive ventilation shafts extended upward through the rock, circulating air to levels far below the surface. It was not a simple refuge, it was a city. Even more astonishing was the scale. Beneath towns like Derinkuyu and Cappadocia stretched enormous underground complexes, networks so vast that entire populations could have lived, worked, and worshipped below ground for months, perhaps even years, without surfacing. Archaeologists counted kitchens with soot-stained ceilings, wine presses, stables for animals, wells for water, and communal rooms large enough to hold gatherings of hundreds. In every corner there were signs of deliberate, long-term habitation. Yet the question remains, who built these vaults and why? According to mainstream archaeology, the earliest sections may have been carved by the Phrygians, an ancient Anatolian people who lived around the 8th century BCE. But many details don't add up. The engineering is far more sophisticated than expected for that era, and some passages show tool marks inconsistent with the primitive iron instruments of the time. The deeper one goes, the more advanced the construction appears, as if the older layers were actually the most complex. Local legends speak of people forced to flee underground to escape from invaders, fire, or even events from the heavens. Some of these stories tell of beings from above, not divine in a religious sense, but literal figures who came from the skies, bringing both fear and knowledge. It is said that the people of the surface were taught to carve the earth for protection, hiding from a cataclysm that swept across the land. What archaeologists found deep in the vaults adds weight to these myths. At the lowest levels, where air grows thin and light vanishes entirely, walls bear ancient inscriptions, cryptic symbols, and geometric patterns that have never been fully decoded. Some appear to mark celestial events, others resemble star maps. And in a few chambers, there are perfectly circular holes carved into the ceiling, aligning precisely with constellations visible from Cappadocia's skies thousands of years ago. The deeper explorers descended, the more the line between architecture and ritual blurred. Many of the chambers seemed less like homes and more like sanctuaries, with altars carved into the stone, channels for liquid offerings, and sculpted figures whose meanings are lost to time. The air, even after millennia, carries a strange stillness. You can almost feel the echo of lives that once thrived down there, far from the light of day. But the mystery doesn't end with human occupation. Beneath the known tunnels, ground-penetrating radar has detected voids, empty spaces far deeper than anything yet excavated. Archaeologists suspect there may be additional levels still buried, or even older chambers sealed off by ancient collapses. Some researchers whisper of another layer, a system of tunnels that could connect multiple underground cities together, forming a subterranean network stretching for miles beneath Cappadocia. If true, that would make this one of the largest human-made underground structures on Earth. And the implications are staggering. Because if ancient people had the knowledge, tools, and organization to carve entire cities beneath the rock, what other abilities might they have possessed that history has since forgotten? It was 1963 in the quiet village of Derinkuyu when a simple home renovation changed everything. A local man tearing down a wall in his basement struck something unexpected, a hollow cavity behind the stone. At first he thought it might be a storage space from an earlier generation, but when he widened the hole, cool air drifted through, carrying the scent of dust and deep earth. Curious, he crawled inside. What he found would soon become one of the greatest archaeological revelations of the 20th century. Behind that wall lay a narrow passage leading downward into darkness. The villager followed it with a lantern, discovering staircases carved into volcanic rock, winding deeper and deeper below his home. He found rooms, dozens of them, connected by tunnels just wide enough for a person to pass through sideways. The air was still and dry, but perfectly breathable. Walls were blackened by ancient fires, and grooves along the stone showed the marks of chisels used thousands of years before. Word spread quickly through the town. Soon, archaeologists arrived, expecting to find a small cellar system or tomb complex. What they found instead stunned them, a multi-level underground city stretching more than 280 feet below the surface. This was the Derinkuyu underground city, and it was unlike anything ever discovered before. Level after level revealed new surprises. There were kitchens with ovens still intact, water wells reaching deep into the aquifer, wine and oil presses, massive circular stone doors that could be rolled into place to seal entire corridors, and entire ventilation shafts stretching upward through the rock. It was a complete, self-sustaining world hidden beneath the earth. As the excavation continued, the team realized that this was not just one man's discovery, but part of an enormous network of subterranean cities scattered across Cappadocia. Derinkuyu was simply the largest uncovered so far. Others, such as Kemakli, Ozkonak, and Tatlarin, followed. Each was unique in layout but clearly shared the same architectural language, the same logic of survival and secrecy. And each had layers that seemed to date back further than the one above, suggesting centuries, even millennia, of use and expansion. What baffled researchers most was how the builders achieved such feats with ancient tools. The passages were smooth, symmetrical, and engineered with precision to prevent collapse. The ventilation system, consisting of more than 50 air shafts, provided oxygen even at depths exceeding 10 stories. The main shaft alone was nearly 180 feet high, and it fed smaller ducts that branched through the tunnels like veins. Even today, if you stand deep within Derinkuyu, you can feel a faint breeze, proof that the airflow system still works after thousands of years. Archaeologists also found areas that served very specific functions: storage chambers and granaries carved to preserve grain in constant cool temperatures. Communal kitchens equipped with soot-covered ceilings, still black from ancient smoke. Religious chambers with altars, crosses, and symbolic carvings, evidence that later Christian refugees used these cities as sanctuaries during times of persecution. And hidden shafts where livestock were kept, ensuring that life underground could continue for months on end. At its height, Derinkuyu could have supported up to 20,000 people, men, women, children, and their animals, living beneath the earth in complete secrecy. But the question remained, why did they go underground in the first place? The earliest explanations were practical: protection from invasions. Cappadocia, lying at the crossroads of empires, was often invaded by Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Arabs. The underground vaults offered a place to hide entire communities from armies that passed through the region. Yet there's something deeper to the story, something the archaeological record cannot easily explain. Many of the oldest tunnels appear to have been carved long before those historical conflicts ever began. Some of the deepest chambers show signs of having been sealed for millennia, untouched since before written history. The tunnels that connect multiple cities together, sometimes spanning over 5 miles, suggest a purpose far greater than mere defense. Researchers began to suspect that the underground vaults were not originally built by those fleeing enemies, but by people escaping something else entirely, a cataclysm or climate event that forced them to live below the surface. Geological evidence hints that Cappadocia's environment once endured sudden, violent changes: volcanic eruptions, ash falls, and long winters triggered by cooling events in the atmosphere. Some even propose that these underground sanctuaries may have been the last refuge of an earlier, forgotten civilization, one that predated known history and whose knowledge was later inherited by the peoples who came after. Whatever the truth may be, the moment the modern world rediscovered Derinkuyu, humanity was forced to ask a haunting question. If entire civilizations once thrived beneath our feet, what else lies hidden below the earth, waiting to be found? When engineers first mapped the underground vaults of Cappadocia, what they found defied both logic and history. Derinkuyu alone descended over 280 feet below the surface, yet the structure remained perfectly stable after thousands of years. Even today, large portions of the tunnels remain intact without reinforcement. For something carved long before modern tools or machinery, the precision is extraordinary. The deeper researchers went, the more their amazement grew. Walls were smooth, straight, and aligned as if designed by an unseen architectural plan. Rooms were evenly distributed, stairways carved with consistent angles, and ventilation shafts placed in mathematically deliberate positions. There were no signs of random excavation. It was all planned. The volcanic tuff that makes up Cappadocia's landscape is relatively soft when first cut, but hardens over time when exposed to air. Whoever built these underground cities understood this geological property perfectly. They carved when the rock was pliable, then allowed it to cure naturally, forming solid stone that could last millennia. It was, in essence, a kind of ancient concrete technology, discovered long before the Romans ever mixed lime and volcanic ash into their famed structures. One of the most remarkable features was the ventilation system. Archaeologists found more than 15,000 individual shafts across Cappadocia, some connecting multiple levels of cities, others reaching up toward the surface. At the lowest levels, air still moves freely. Even with modern instruments, engineers cannot fully explain how airflow remains consistent throughout the maze. It's as if the entire complex was designed with the same fluid logic as a living organism, breathing through invisible lungs. Equally impressive were the water systems. Wells descended deep enough to tap the region's freshwater table, yet they were built so that upper levels couldn't contaminate the supply. This indicates a deep understanding of hydrology, a science supposedly unknown to early Anatolian cultures. Some wells had channels carved to direct runoff water into separate cisterns, perhaps to protect drinking water during long periods underground. Others were equipped with grooves that hinted at rope systems or pulleys, suggesting some form of mechanical lifting technology. As archaeologists explored further, they found large, circular stones positioned at narrow tunnel entrances. These were rolling doors, weighing between 400 and 1,000 pounds, shaped perfectly to block entry when rolled into place. Each door had a small central hole, possibly for observation, weapon placement, or ventilation. But what stunned experts was how they were fitted. Each door was carved from a single stone, moved through tight corridors, and then somehow lifted and placed into an exact groove that allowed it to rotate smoothly. Even today, replicating that movement inside such confined spaces would require advanced engineering and planning. Some of the chambers revealed even stranger functions. Acoustic studies inside the underground vaults show that certain rooms have unusual sound properties. Voices echo in controlled frequencies, and deep resonances can be felt rather than heard. In the largest halls, perhaps temples or gathering places, sound waves reverberate in a way that amplifies chanting or speech, filling the space like an underground cathedral. If intentional, this would mean the builders had a practical understanding of acoustics long before modern architecture ever did. Then there's the question of lighting. The tunnels twist for miles, and the deeper you go, the less natural light can reach. Researchers found no traces of soot in many sections, suggesting that torches or oil lamps were not the main sources of light. So how did they see? Some theories suggest reflective surfaces, such as polished minerals or metal plates, could have been used to direct light from surface openings into deeper sections. Others believe they may have used vegetable oils that burned with minimal smoke, though no definitive proof exists. Even stranger, radar imaging has shown hidden voids beneath the known levels of Derinkuyu and Kaimakli, vast, unexcavated spaces that could represent even older layers. Some archaeologists whisper that these may not be human-made at all, but geological formations later adapted by ancient builders. Still, the shapes detected are too regular, too deliberate, to be entirely natural. One of the most compelling aspects of Cappadocia's underground world is that each city seems to have been connected. Long tunnels, some still unexplored, stretch for miles, linking one settlement to another. Derinkuyu and Kaimakli are believed to share at least one passage, running over 5 miles between them. Imagine the coordination required to align two separate excavation sites, hundreds of feet underground, and meet in the middle without modern mapping tools. It's not simply architecture, it's communication, a collective effort across generations. Modern archaeologists have proposed several theories to explain how this was achieved. Some suggest the use of simple surveying tools like plumb lines and shadow-based geometry. Others think the builders may have marked their positions above ground using landmarks and carved downward at matching angles. But no one can say for sure. The sheer precision of it all remains one of history's great engineering enigmas. As incredible as the physical construction is, there's something even more mysterious about these vaults: what they contain. Archaeologists began finding artifacts that didn't belong to any one period: pottery from Hittite times, Byzantine crosses, tools that predate both, and even relics from early Christian refugees. The deeper they went, the older and stranger the findings became. It was as if each era had inherited the underground world from the one before it, never truly knowing who had started it all. Some of the oldest carvings found in the deepest sections are unlike anything known in Anatolian archaeology. They depict stylized figures with elongated heads, animals that don't exist in the region, and symbols that resemble constellations. It was clear that whoever began the first tunnels did so for a reason lost to modern memory, a reason perhaps tied to the stars themselves. For decades, scholars and explorers have tried to answer one burning question: why would ancient people go to such unimaginable lengths to build entire cities beneath the earth? Defensive purposes make sense at first glance. Cappadocia's position at the crossroads of empires meant countless invasions over the centuries. Yet, this explanation only accounts for the later use of these underground cities, not their origin. Archaeological dating reveals that the deepest layers are far older than any recorded invasion. Even the Hittites, who once ruled central Anatolia over 3,000 years ago, seem to have inherited some of these tunnels rather than built them. So if not war, what drove humanity below ground? Theory 1. The Great Cataclysm. One of the most discussed theories is that Cappadocia's underground world began as a refuge from catastrophe. Around 10,000 BCE, Earth's climate changed abruptly at the end of the last ice age. Floods, violent storms, and possible meteor impacts devastated much of the planet. Many researchers link this to the mysterious Younger Dryas event, a period when temperatures plummeted and chaos reigned across the globe. In ancient myths from nearly every culture, there are echoes of this disaster: tales of floods, fire from the sky, and a time when humanity was forced to seek shelter beneath the ground. The Sumerians spoke of gods retreating into the earth's belly. Native American stories tell of people guided underground by sky beings to survive a world consumed by fire. And the legends of Anatolia describe the people of the stone who lived in darkness during the years of the cold sun. Geological studies in Cappadocia reveal evidence of immense volcanic activity during that same era. The region's entire landscape, with its cone-shaped formations and layers of ash and tuff, was sculpted by eruptions from ancient volcanoes like Mount Urches. If one of these eruptions coincided with the global cooling event, the sky could have darkened for years, driving early humans to seek shelter underground. If that is true, then the vaults of Cappadocia may not just be the result of human ingenuity, but of survival during the planet's most violent transition. Theory 2. A lost civilization. Another theory, far more controversial, suggests that the underground cities were the work of a forgotten civilization, one that predates known history. Some researchers point to the similarity between Cappadocia's subterranean tunnels and those found on other continents. In Egypt, ancient texts describe the hidden chambers beneath the sands. In South America, the Incas spoke of roads of the serpent, tunnels said to run beneath entire mountains. And in Malta, labyrinthine chambers carved in solid rock bear uncanny resemblance to those in Anatolia, complete with circular doorways and acoustic temples. These similarities, spread across distant cultures, raise a haunting question. Were they connected by a single lost source of knowledge? The more ancient sites we uncover, the more we see that our timeline of civilization may be incomplete. Göbekli Tepe, located not far from Cappadocia, was built around 11,600 years ago, long before agriculture or writing. Its massive stone pillars and celestial alignments prove that organized, intelligent societies existed long before the so-called dawn of civilization. Could the same people who raised Göbekli Tepe have also carved the first underground sanctuaries, perhaps as a continuation of their spiritual or survival practices? Some researchers, like author Andrew Collins, suggest that an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization might have taken refuge beneath the earth after global disasters, carrying with them a fragment of knowledge that later seeded early human cultures. If this were true, the underground vaults of Cappadocia could be among the last remnants of that lost age. Theory 3. Celestial visitors. There's another, even stranger possibility, one that lies at the intersection of mythology and mystery. Throughout the region's folklore, there are stories of beings who came from the skies and instructed humans to descend into the ground. These entities were described as luminous, tall, and otherworldly, not gods in the human sense, but guardians or watchers. Some claim these stories might reflect ancient encounters with visitors from beyond, or more likely, ancient interpretations of cosmic events such as meteor storms or comets that lit up the sky. Supporters of this idea point to the star-like carvings in the lowest chambers and alignments between surface structures and celestial constellations. It's possible that the builders associated survival underground with a cosmic cycle, perhaps hiding during a recurring event tied to the heavens. Whether this represents mythology or memory, the connection between the stars and the Earth remains a defining feature of Cappadocia's mystery. Theory 4. The continuum of use. A more grounded explanation still leaves room for awe. It's entirely possible that these underground structures were started in prehistoric times for survival, then continually expanded and repurposed by later cultures. The Hittites may have enlarged them, the Phrygians fortified them, and early Christians sanctified them as places of worship and refuge. Over millennia, each civilization left its mark, layering history atop history until the origins were buried completely. If that's true, then the underground vaults are not just one civilization's creation, but the cumulative effort of humanity's endless instinct to survive, adapt, and hide from the chaos of the surface world. No matter which theory you choose to believe, the conclusion remains the same. The story of Cappadocia's underground world is the story of humanity itself, our fear of destruction, our brilliance in adversity, and our eternal desire to endure. Even after decades of exploration, archaeologists believe that only a fraction of Cappadocia's underground world has been uncovered. Derinkuyu alone, with its 18 known levels, may represent just the upper portion of a much deeper system, a subterranean network stretching across the entire region, far beneath the tourist-accessible sections. When researchers first mapped Derinkuyu, they noticed that some corridors ended abruptly in solid walls of compacted tuff. Ground-penetrating radar revealed hollow spaces beyond those walls, unexcavated chambers buried deeper still. Accessing them has proven difficult, the rock is unstable, and many passages were intentionally sealed with stone slabs thousands of years ago. Yet, behind some of those walls lie signatures of vast voids, larger even than any room already discovered. Recent finds beneath Nevşehir. In 2014, construction workers in the modern city of Nevşehir stumbled upon something extraordinary, tunnels and chambers stretching beneath the city center. At first, officials assumed it was another small complex like those found elsewhere in Cappadocia, but as excavation continued, it became clear that this was something far greater. The discovery revealed what could be the largest underground city ever found, sprawling across 460,000 square meters, nearly twice the size of Derinkuyu. The Turkish Ministry of Culture described it as a city unlike any other, with multi-level corridors, water channels, and security doors. Some passages appeared to connect to known sites miles away, hinting that Cappadocia's underground cities might have functioned as a single integrated network. Even more intriguing was the discovery of blackened wall markings resembling ancient mining techniques, as if portions of the city had been deliberately scorched, perhaps to harden the walls or to seal off certain areas. Some tunnels contained carved niches where oil lamps might have once burned, yet, as in Derinkuyu, entire sections showed no soot residue at all, suggesting advanced ventilation or alternative lighting methods. Archaeologists also unearthed artifacts from several different eras, pottery shards dating to the Byzantine period, tools consistent with Hittite and Phrygian metallurgy, and deeper still, fragments of obsidian blades and flint tools so ancient they predate written history. These findings confirmed what many suspected: the underground world of Cappadocia wasn't built all at once. It evolved layer by layer, a living record of civilizations rising and falling above ground, while others quietly continued their lives below. Sealed chambers and forbidden zones. Despite decades of research, many parts of these cities remain off-limits. Some are too unstable, others are deliberately sealed by authorities for safety reasons. But local whispers tell of tunnels that lead even deeper, places where strange inscriptions have been found, unlike any known script, and where electrical instruments malfunction inexplicably. One Turkish researcher recounted descending into a restricted chamber in Kaymakli, where his flashlight began to dim, even with fresh batteries. When he emerged, he realized his watch had stopped as well. The phenomenon could easily have natural explanations: humidity, minerals, or magnetism. But for those who have ventured into the depths, the experience feels anything but ordinary. There are also reports of underground water channels that still flow, cold, clear, and untouched by the modern world. Some believe these may connect to subterranean rivers that run beneath the region, perhaps feeding into deeper, uncharted systems. And then there are the closed shafts, narrow vertical passages leading downward, filled with debris or sealed with ancient stone caps. When radar scans probe beneath them, they detect more voids, chambers that no one has entered in recorded history. Some archaeologists believe these could be the oldest sections of all, the original vaults from which the rest of the network grew. The acoustic enigma. One of the strangest ongoing mysteries lies not in what is seen, but what is heard. In the deeper levels of Derinkuyu, engineers recorded subtle resonances in the rock. When specific frequencies are played, even faintly, the walls vibrate, amplifying the sound like a natural amplifier. The effect is eerie and powerful. Some believe these resonances were used intentionally, perhaps in rituals or communication between levels. It's possible that chanting or drumming could carry for hundreds of meters through solid stone, connecting people scattered across the underground labyrinth. Modern scientists studying the acoustics have found that certain frequencies, particularly around 110 Hz, create a psychological response in the human brain, inducing a feeling of awe or fear. Could the ancient builders have discovered this effect by accident, or did they understand something about sound that modern science is only beginning to rediscover? A mystery still growing. Every year, new sections of Cappadocia's underworld are mapped, revealing that the known cities are likely only part of something far grander. Some researchers now suggest that beneath the entire region lies a massive subterranean network, possibly over 250 miles of tunnels connecting dozens of smaller sites. The complexity implies long-term coordination, shared knowledge, and perhaps even centralized planning over generations. Whoever first carved these passages, their intention seems clear: survival. But survival from what, and for how long, remains one of the great unanswered questions of archaeology. The story of Cappadocia isn't finished. With every new discovery, it grows deeper, darker, and more astonishing. A literal descent into humanity's forgotten past. To imagine life beneath Cappadocia is to imagine an entirely different form of existence, one shaped not by the cycles of day and night, but by the rhythm of firelight and breath. The people who lived underground adapted their lives to the darkness, transforming stone corridors into homes, sanctuaries, and places of faith. Down there, sound replaced sight, and the line between the living world and the mythic world blurred completely. Archaeologists studying Derinkuyu and Kaimakli have pieced together a hauntingly vivid image of what daily life might have looked like for those who called these vaults home. The layout of the cities themselves reveals a kind of organic planning, as if generations gradually expanded their underground domain in response to immediate need. Narrow entry tunnels opened into wide communal spaces where families gathered around oil lamps that flickered against the walls. Children played near cisterns filled with fresh water. Women tended to stone hearths, grinding grain into flour. Men maintained ventilation shafts, cleared airways, and cared for livestock that lived in specially carved chambers, ventilated to reduce the buildup of heat and gas. The underground environment, surprisingly, provided a natural advantage: constant temperature. Cappadocia's surface weather can shift from freezing winters to scorching summers, but beneath the ground, the temperature stays between 55 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, perfect for preserving food and wine. Grain was stored in deep silos carved into the walls, sealed with stone plugs. Amphorae filled with olive oil and dried fruit were tucked into alcoves. Clay jars of wine aged silently in the cool air, untouched by the harshness of the seasons. Cooking was done in low, dome-shaped kitchens. The ceilings were blackened with soot, but the rooms were cleverly ventilated. Smoke drifted through small openings carved upward into the stone, dispersing through thin shafts that reached the surface. Researchers discovered small channels along the floors, possibly used for draining liquid waste, or perhaps to circulate air when fires were lit. Despite the confined space, air quality in many chambers remains astonishingly fresh, even today. Religion, too, was an inseparable part of life underground. Across Cappadocia's underground world, archaeologists have found dozens of chapels and sanctuaries, some with altars, others decorated with simple carvings of crosses or solar symbols. The deeper one goes, the more abstract the symbols become, suggesting that spiritual life evolved across centuries, from pagan reverence for the earth and sky to Christian worship of God and salvation beneath it. In Derinkuyu, one of the largest chambers discovered is believed to have been a cathedral-sized meeting hall, possibly used for sermons or gatherings. The acoustics are so perfect that a single voice can be heard across the room without echo, a feat of natural architecture that feels deliberate. One can imagine entire congregations huddled there during invasions or natural disasters, singing hymns that reverberated through the tunnels, their voices merging with the steady heartbeat of the earth above them. Even more haunting is the idea of how time passed underground. Without sunlight, people relied on oil lamps, tasks, and memory to track their days. Sleep cycles likely followed no set pattern. Instead, communities lived in a state of perpetual twilight, guided by collective activity rather than the sun's position. It's possible that the absence of day and night altered their perception of time entirely. Perhaps for them, time was not linear but circular, like the tunnels themselves, looping endlessly back upon one another. Security was a constant concern. Every level could be sealed off using rolling stone doors, which could be closed from the inside but not easily opened from the outside. When danger approached, invading armies, plagues, or dust storms, entire communities could vanish below ground in hours. Some tunnels even contained trap mechanisms, narrow choke points where defenders could fend off intruders or collapse passages if needed. The design reflects not only fear, but foresight, a meticulous awareness of how to protect hundreds, even thousands, of lives below ground. Yet, for all its practicality, life underground carried a profound psychological weight. Living without sunlight, hearing only the sound of one's own breath and the distant echoes of unseen footsteps, must have left an imprint on those who endured it. Perhaps that's why so many of the carvings found deep within the vaults depict light, stars, suns, fire, and geometric halos, symbols of illumination in a world of darkness. One of the most evocative discoveries comes from the lowest levels of Keimakli, where a wall carving shows a human figure holding what appears to be a radiant orb above its head. Some interpret it as a representation of the divine light conquering darkness. Others see it as a metaphor for knowledge, or perhaps for the hope of return to the surface. Either way, it captures the paradox of Cappadocia's people. They fled the surface to survive, but their art was always about the light they left behind. Archaeologists believe that during long periods of safety, these underground communities emerged back to the surface to farm and trade, but the cities were never abandoned for good. When war, famine, or disaster struck again, the people returned below, each time carving new passages, each time going deeper. Generation after generation, the surface world would rise and fall, while below, the silent cities waited, preserved in shadow. Even after thousands of years, stepping into those tunnels feels less like walking into history and more like entering a memory not just of a place, but of humanity's will to endure, even in absolute darkness. Cappadocia's underground world is not just an archaeological wonder, it's a mirror reflecting the forgotten resilience of humanity. Each level, each chamber, each scar carved into volcanic stone tells the same story. We have always fought to survive, and we have always remembered the light even when buried in darkness. When you walk through the narrow tunnels of Derinkuyu or Keimakli today, the silence feels alive. It hums with a low, steady presence, as if the air itself remembers the generations who lived and died there. The walls seem to breathe, their rough surfaces worn smooth by countless hands. It's not the cold silence of an abandoned place, but the hushed stillness of something waiting to be understood. Modern archaeologists continue to explore, mapping new passages and discovering new anomalies. Some tunnels lead to chambers filled with ash, remnants of fires that burned for warmth and protection. Others open into massive voids that no one dares to enter yet, where strange drafts whisper through unseen cracks. With each new discovery, the questions multiply instead of fade. Who were the first to descend into the earth? What forced them to carve an entire world below the surface? And why do similar structures appear across continents, as if humanity once shared a single memory of catastrophe and survival? It is perhaps fitting that Cappadocia still refuses to give up all its secrets. In an age obsessed with answers, it reminds us that mystery is not the enemy of truth, it is part of it. Every civilization believes it has reached the peak of understanding, only to have the earth itself reveal something that rewrites its story. Derinkuyu and its sister cities whisper that there was once a time when knowledge was carved into stone, and wisdom meant knowing when to hide from the wrath of the sky. But the most profound lesson of Cappadocia isn't about lost technology or vanished civilizations, it's about endurance. The people who built those tunnels didn't do it for glory or conquest. They did it to preserve life, to protect their families, to carry forward their stories. And in doing so, they left behind a monument to human persistence greater than any temple above ground. Some say the underground cities are metaphors for the human soul, layers within layers, light buried beneath fear, beauty hidden under the weight of survival. And perhaps that's why they fascinate us still, because somewhere deep down, we recognize ourselves in them. In the end, the vaults of Cappadocia are not just relics of the past, they are warnings and promises. They remind us that civilizations can vanish, but not the will to endure. They teach us that beneath the ashes of every collapse lies a seed waiting to awaken again. And they show us that even in the darkest depths, humanity never truly stops looking for the light. The earth may have buried their world, but it could not bury their spirit. Cappadocia still breathes, quietly, patiently, waiting for us to remember what those ancient builders already knew. That survival, in the end, is the greatest form of faith.